I think I'm live. All right. Hey, what's up, y'all? It's been a minute since I got on here, and as y'all can see, uh it's nighttime, and I get the whole election thing is going on. So, but I was thinking about this today, so I was like, man, I really want to get back on here and talk to y'all. Y'all probably can't see me because it's dark in here, but I don't care. This is not what this is about necessarily. Y'all ain't gotta see me. Um, But anywho, yeah, y'all, I want to talk about this real quick. So, I want to talk about why the election is so heavily focused on women's rights. And I feel like let's just start off by saying you got to look at things from a lot of different points of views, okay? Y'all know I get deep with it. Y'all know I like to, you know what I'm saying, like paint a picture to a degree when it come down to um my topics of conversation and what I like to talk about. But yeah, I am saying this basically because I feel like as American women, we really don't take the time out to um, ask why we become a target every time there's an election or anytime there's something to be talked about that's important. Like, um, this election, for example, dealing with the whole reproductive rights and being able to have an abortion. And I just heard somebody else say that, like, you know, um, that they will be, I guess, reconsidering the government assistance like WIC and Section 8 and all this type of stuff, or not, rather not reconsidering it, but basically making it to where they push you into family and marriage instead of you being able to choose like your path, as far as like, oh, do I want to have a baby or don't I want to have a baby, or if you do need government assistance that maybe they would require you to be married. I'm not sure exactly all of the particular terms, but I know that there is supposed to be some type of push to where there's referring to being married or getting married if you're pregnant, first, at least. um, so, anyways, I'm not getting all into it personally because I feel like it's a whole fear monger situation when we should be definitely looking at it and saying, okay, in what ways do they really have the power over this? My thing is this, okay, we can make, in general, we can make smarter decisions as women, and we can just have standards and not have, I don't want to say miscellaneous children because that sounds crazy. That sounds like, I'm trying to, um, like say that that's what we're doing, but that's not really what we're doing. I know that there's this whole backstory to it where it's like a lot of times we deal with a lot of manipulation as we grow older, and then a lot of times when we finally reach those ages where we understand what was going on in life, we get that, like, oh, some things we believed about men and about family and stuff, it may have only come from religion, or it may have only come from like what our examples were in our immediate family. And to me, it's like, um, it depends on if the people in your immediate family even had a good example, so if you have to make certain mistakes until you figure out, like, you know this, I could do this differently. You know what I'm saying? I get that you might end up having a child in the process, you know what I'm saying? So what I'm trying to say here is that they don't really have power over our reproduction. We have the power over our reproduction. And if we were to take that and understand that and choose wisely, right? And I'm not just going to say choose wisely, throw it out there. I know that's not easy because ultimately, if we do choose better, it does mean that some of us won't end up having children, you know. Hey, I'm not going now. See, okay, so when it comes to who to vote for, I don't really think Like this election is so crazy to me. I feel like I'm just going to stay in the middle and say I don't really like either one, because the conversation seems to be such a fear mongering conversation in general, where it's like there's so much to think about and talk about, and there's so much that's not being thought about or talked about. And so it's like, how can we truly make a good decision, you know? So I feel like this is, it's just so but what I can discern from the conversation that we've at least had so far is that it's heavily focused on women, and how, to how women need help sometimes when we end up in these messed up circumstances. So for me it's like there's a whole reason behind that, and that means that they have a lot of interest in that particular area for a reason. They want to have control over it. They know we have the control, but a lot of us don't have the education, you know? I mean, that's just the truth. We don't have the education to make a sound decision. But ultimately, if we had better standards for men in general, if we just said, you know what, bump this, we don't have to have babies and give men legacies, you know what I'm saying, if they don't deserve legacies, because ultimately that is destructive towards us by having babies with people. And the baby, because we have to understand, we create sometimes crazy people. We create the crazies we see in the world, the people who are, mentally unstable, because when you're born into the world and your parents don't like give you a good example, or if they treat you like they didn't want you and you were kind of a mistake, and all of that stuff is a breeding ground for mental illness, y'all. Like if we just be honest with ourselves about where a lot of these messed up mentalities come from, then we can understand that truly, in order to change the direction, we would have to make a better decision about who we're putting in the world and take it seriously. Like everybody is kind of living the fairy tale of like, oh, it's so cute, get married, have a baby. And I mean, I agree, it's cute, it's pretty on a picture, but if we're just going out for the image, like a lot of us are living miserable lives behind those images. So it's like if we get honest about it and we start saying, well, shoot, how many of us have kids right now, but we look around and see like, women who don't have kids, and we say, dang, I wonder what I would be doing with my life if I did not choose, to do this at this time. And then kind of go back to that and say, what would have helped me if I had heard it at that time that I was, dizzy and dumb about life, and, you know, made me do something different? Is there something that I believe would have helped me? And then try in your best way to teach that to your daughters, because ultimately what we're learning from this election and the whole conversation about women is that this is how they control people, by making a heavy conversation on reproductive rights. People listen up when we start talking about that. So that's ultimately, you can say that that's powerful. So if we start thinking about that and we start becoming proactive rather than reactive about it, it's like that's how we would turn the tide, and they wouldn't have any kind of control over it. Period. I don't think they have control anyway. It's just that if you end up in a messed up situation because you need help, a lot of times you have to basically play into the hands of those who will help or who are saying they will help. And it's I mean, once it's done, hindsight is 2020. And so I'm not trying to per se come down on people who are already in a situation, but rather start to kind of turn the wheels in their mind to maybe think of themselves first when they started making certain decisions, when they started having kids, or how they chose their husband. Like, like I hear people, you know, state what their standards are. And sometimes, like, I mean, of course, when we're talking online, everybody's not going to be completely honest. So some people may say, oh, I need a guy who's 6'2" and he's this kind of complexion, or he's this and this and that. And then most of the time it's like look based, and we're not talking about in general, what do we think that a good father for a son would look like, or a good father for a daughter? Like, we're not going into those things, even though that becomes a big part of our life once we do decide to have kids with this man, even if he's 6'2", even if he's the finest man on the planet. It's like, you know, what else are we considering before we actually start a family with them? And what are we, what I'm saying? What are we doing? Are we even considering ourselves and saying, well, shoot, um, I barely got time right now to do the stuff I really want to do. And if I add a child to the mix, you know, how am I going to be able to do this or that? I think that there's so much fear monger programming in the movies and the TV and all this type of stuff that tell us, oh, you don't want to be a woman without a kid. You don't want to be a woman without a husband. That we get so um, locked into that, and fear of, being seen as that to a degree, that we jump into stupid situations and start having a bunch of kids. And because those kids can't get the particular attention they need, or whatever, whatever, um, we create crazy people in the world. And I feel like, not just crazy people, let me stop just throwing the word crazy out there, but y'all know what I mean, like people who are mentally unstable. Because think about this. So the other thing that they're threatening right now is that the Department of Education would be taken away. There will be no more free schooling, et cetera, et cetera. But in the last few years, a lot of people have been talking about how poor the public education system is anyway. We've seen the result of the public education system for at least two generations now. My parents' generation, my generation, and we're seeing Generation X come up behind everybody. And can we really vouch and say that the public education is good, even? You know what I'm saying? But what if, those families that are like, that sends them into a heart palpitation because they have more kids right now than they can afford. They can't even imagine putting, having to pay for school. So it's like, of course, that would make them scared and make them maybe want to have a fight or flight decision and be like, dang, I need to go vote for this person or that person. But what if they only had one kid? Because you know what I noticed too? Y'all gonna think that I'm gonna super Virgo this up. I'm about to analyze this down. And some of y'all gonna think this is crazy, but this is so true. But everybody don't want to be honest about this, y'all. There, you can control a lot more than you realize. So there is this like little saying about having, like, I'm not trying to offend the Capricorns out there, but there is this little lore that's like, if you have a child and your first child is a Capricorn, a lot of times that means that, like, doom for the relationship or whatever. I know that's not 100%, right? I'm just saying this as an example, because I was literally thinking about it. How would you not have a Capricorn child? You could literally just go back, boom, 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 9 months, and say, okay, for this month, we're not going to try to have a child. And that means for that month, there's no, you know what I'm saying? Nothing, y'all ain't going to do nothing that could produce a child. Now, y'all might do stuff, but y'all might, you know what I'm saying? Like, protect yourself, et cetera, for that month. And then, boom, you can avoid having a Capricorn child. But even more so, you could decide, I want a particular zodiac of a child. I want my child to be born in August or whatever, whatever. Now, I do know that there's some variation. Some people have a harder time, getting that pregnancy when they want it. So I would absolutely recommend maybe having a range of dates that you're okay with. But I say that to say, to show you how much you can actually control when it comes down to children you have. Now, you probably can't control boy or girl. I think they're probably trying to come up with some, BS to like, make that a controllable thing. But you know what I'm saying? I'm just giving examples of ways that there are things that are absolutely controllable, but we, to a degree, I really feel like we pretend we can't control them. As women, we can definitely, make certain decisions and make certain things happen. We can decide, you know what I'm saying, for ourselves based off of what we've seen in the world. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect. We don't know everything, nobody knows everything. But we can make some really good decisions if we hunker down and was honest with ourselves. That's all I'm saying. So when they start talking about women's rights and all this type of stuff, and that is the main points of, it's not the only point of the election. Obviously, there's a lot of other things, but I feel like that is the main thing that I've been seeing on the commercials. Like the first thing is like some fear mongering. Oh my gosh, I couldn't get this life saving surgery and da 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 da. And it's talking about women's reproductive rights, which makes me think that that's the main like swaying point. Like, if you tell enough women that you didn't vote for Kamala, they're going to think you're against them type situation right now, because that's like the main thing she's been talking about. But I almost want to rip the control from her hands and say, no, we can actually decide that ourselves as well. But yes, that also means that we would have to make some tough and some hard decisions and be like, look, okay, based on the last generations, based on the generation that's coming up, I want to see something different. So I'm going to have to change how I choose who I'm going to reproduce with. Who am I going to replicate is really the question here. Because we replicate and put back into the world whatever man that we decide. You know what I'm saying? So if it's not a good man, you're probably not going to have good sons, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, or daughters, because um, daughters get a lot from their fathers, especially the whole recognition of love from a man comes from a daughter's father. So if you can't get someone in that girl's life early on to show her what love is supposed to look like, if she can't recognize it, she gonna go out here in the world and she's going to get with people, and the you're gonna be like, what in the world does she see in him? And honestly, you won't be able to pinpoint it because her recognition of love is off. Her glasses are scratched up as far as what she believes a man should be. So that, I know, is a lot of pressure, okay? But that alone could help you to choose a better man in general. What is my daughter going to see as a representation of love? Because we don't want her going out into the world recognizing being ignored as love, or being hit as love, or being, certain things. These are simple things, even though they become complex. These are things that I feel like as women, we have a lot more control over it than we give ourselves the credit for, you know? But obviously, they can sway the whole world with talking about these things with us. Hold on, let me plug my phone back up. I gotta make sure it's charging because it was dying. But yeah, anyways, but that's ultimately like my message here is like, I listen to Shira. I ain't gonna lie. Y'all already know if you've ever clicked on my channel. I do listen to Shira, and I'm gonna be real. I don't always agree with everything, but I love the fact that there's another perspective on choosing, because as what am I, generation? No, a millennial. I guess I'm considered a millennial. I feel like we weren't taught much, but based on like the movies, because I feel like that's really where we got our ideas from. um it was kind of fairy tale like, it was very unrealistic. And so I think we look for things in men that honestly are not in men, they are really feminine aspects, to be honest. I could really break that down, but I'm trying not to get too way beyond like my thoughts process here. I'm trying to keep it simple. But I feel like if you go back and watch like our movies, like growing up in the 90s and etc., um and you look at how love stories are formed, like how the relationships come about, how they like meet the person, even like down to just like listen to the music even too, just how they describe the person that they're in love with, and you can see it's very surface level. And most of our music really, well, when it comes to, okay, what I noticed is this: when it comes to black music, our men were singing to us about sex mostly, not really love, maybe a little bit of relationship talk here and there, but like very little. But if you listen to like maybe country music, like other different types of genres of music, um, they actually sing to their women about love to a degree, but they also have their fair share of pick music, as Sheer would call it. But yeah, so you can kind of see where the ideas are and what we were kind of doing and what we believed. But if we take a step back and look at that and then compare it to, okay, we're going to be replicating these real people in this world. It's going to be real life. And the little person that comes out of our body is going to be like this person that we are choosing to have a baby with. Then we might go, oh, those were not good ways of choosing. Those were not good, you know, it was random. Like a lot of times the love stories are more random than, you know, anything. How do I guess what's the other side of that coin is maybe if you meet someone while doing an interest that you have and y'all have similar interests, or you have connections in your family, and families know each other. Like nowadays families don't be knowing each other, like it don't be like that. I mean, there are some people that are still social, of course. I mean, there are people with networks, and there are people that are great at networking, but I feel like I'm just talking about a regular degular schmegler kind of people out there. It's like we're not meeting family friends and stuff like that where we know how the person has grown up and we know like things about the person. This day and age, it is so random that it can literally be people flipping the phone screen and swiping left or right. And that is scary randomness, bruh. So, because you don't have any idea of that person's like you don't know that person's traumas even, and people are not being truthful and honest. So that's even more reason to take our time and really kind of, you know get to know a person. And if a person's not trying to get to know us, that is, man, i I have noticed in the world today that some men they don't even want you to think they're trying to get to know you. Like you can literally be like, "Hey, how are you?" and they'll answer you, but they will not ask you how you're doing back. Or like there are certain guys out there that don't even want to know things about you. They might ask you where you're from and some surface level things. But like when it really gets down to it, it's like if you notice that automatically, now imagine okay, this guy, he doesn't even want to get to know you. He doesn't even want to ask you how your day is going or how you're doing after you ask him how you're doing. And let's say you mistake that for flirting or some type of, this reverse psychology, because every once in a while he says something nice because they know how to, sprinkle it in there and make it look good. But if you're paying attention, you will see, right? But let's say that you mistake that and then you go have that man's baby, and then, of course, he didn't try to get to know you, so he really doesn't care. He's more likely to leave and not give a hoot. But if he does stay around and he still treats you that way, and your daughter sees that, what does your daughter now recognize as love? That's what she's going to go find. So this is the importance of that. That's all I'm saying, is that we recreate the cycle if we don't change how we choose and stuff. So Okay, so that's the dating level, and it's kind of surface, but it goes even further because I mean, shoot, when you don't have a particular type of lifestyle, this world does fearmonger you. So when, like, all of these movies about, or this about, like, I watched a movie on Tubi with Kelly Rowland the other day, a Christmas movie, and of course she's the entrepreneur type, she's the businesswoman, et cetera, et cetera. And of course she's like dang near desperate. I ain't gonna say she was desperate for a man, I'm gonna say her family was desperate for her to have a man. She wasn't necessarily that way, but the way that they portrayed her was that she was kind of awkward when it came to dating, and it was like, everybody was pushing her towards dating, you know and it's like that's the image that they portray of us when we kind of go the opposite direction and say, you know what, I'm going to focus on myself and I'm going to build myself up and have a good life, even if I have a man or don't, or have children or don't. Because that same woman could absolutely have a man, but she may not have children. She may not want to have children. But that's a no-no. They don't want us thinking like that. So that's not how that movie went. Okay. So, um, while you're in that lifestyle, right? And this goes back to when your daughter doesn't recognize love the correct way. It's like she could be doing great in her life as far as these other things or whatever, but if she doesn't have the mindset of, oh, well, it's because I recognize what love is. I know that if the right guy came along, I know what he would look like, and I choose this, then she might also be miserable, right? So people are trying to avoid that. So it looks similar, but it's not the same energetically. So what I'm saying is, if she has the opposite and she didn't choose that, but then she just hyper focuses on work because she feels she has no other choice, right? But to hyper focus on her work, then she will be miserable. She will actually be miserable. You know what I'm saying? Like, instead of it being like, oh, I wake up every day and I do what I do and I make my money and I'm living good on purpose because that person that is supposed to be around isn't around. And I know if I chose these other guys that are not doing what I know is love, that's detrimental to me. And I choose not to have that. And so that gives you a whole different energy. So yes, you're successful. Yes, are this lady that they told us we can't be, but you're not miserable because you know you're choosing these things on purpose. You get what I'm saying? Other than the latter, where it looks the same, but energetically it's different. So, anyways, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I think I made a good point there. But this is why the election is so heavily on women's rights and these types of things, because it is ultimately a very powerful subject, which means that women have the power here and we actually can take this thing into our own hands. We do not have to wait around for them to say, oh, we can or can't have abortions or whatever. Now, of course, there's that whole thing about if someone is, you know, like the R worded, I don't think we can say it on YouTube. Someone is R worded, or if some things like that, and those types of things. Um, I know it happens. I'm gonna say don't think I don't know how often that happens where a pregnancy actually occurs. So I do believe that practically it would make sense to at least have the option. So I'll at least put that out there, that is obvious. Like, I feel like no duh, but of course they would dangle that carrot in front of our face because elections are ultimately fear mongering anyway. But see who they're fear mongering. Are they fear mongering the men? No, not really. They may have a couple of issues in there the men care about. Don't get me wrong now, but they don't push it as much as they pushing us. Well, at least for this election, particularly. It might be the fact that a bunch, like, women are basically talking about things now and how we want, things to be different, and they know that that is what we're focused on right now, so they're trying to kind of be in line with that. But I feel like, we have to recognize what's really happening. ultimately, when it comes down to outside of that particular situation of someone, being taken without their will or outside of their will and having to deal with that, outside of that, we do have control. And even when it comes down to that, when we now let's jump in that lane just for a moment, just so I can say there is a particular level of control we can have with that as well. One is we need to understand that the the predator normally is not someone that is not close to you. A lot of times these predators are people who are close to you, right? That's what I have heard, that it's when it comes to women being R-worded, I think we have this idea that it's like some dude in a van that, or some person in the alley that runs up to us because that's what the movies show us. But in real life, it's the men we are friends with. It's sometimes, I hate to say this, family members. Sometimes it's boyfriends, even it could even be husbands, those types of things. But again, if we learn how to, well, first we raise our standards and we learn to recognize certain signs and things in people, and we ourselves stop being so freaking nice, which I talked about on my this channel. I don't know if I took that video down, but this, I would say, even toxic positivity or toxic niceness that we always give guys because that's what we've been taught. Don't hurt a man's feelings, even though it's really hard to hurt a man's feelings, like in real life, when it comes down to certain things. Now, I'm not going to say their feelings don't get hurt, but I'm just going to say that, like, certain, like, I think we don't realize, because some men, like, they're really like, we'll be nice to them and they're not even nice to us type stuff. Like, they don't even think twice about being messed up towards us, but we're over there and trying not to hurt their feelings. But sometimes we're trying not to hurt their feelings at our own expense, which is a problem. Okay. When we do that, we have to understand there are predator men out here who recognize what we're doing and they see it and they know we're that type of girl. So they know, they feel like they can get away with certain things. So we have to start to recognize the faults in men, because a lot of us millennials, we grew up with too many freaking fairy tales and we believe too many freaking fairy tales about men. When a man is saying messed up things to you, if he, joking and calling you ugly or weird or whatever, how guys do, sometimes they say weird stuff but it sound like a joke, da da da. Sometimes you need to take a step back and be like, I don't know, you know what I'm saying, and I don't know, because he say that stuff a little too much, or you know what I'm saying, just analyze the situation a little bit. Stop giving them so much of the benefit of the doubt, because they know you're doing it. These are grown, well, I'm talking about grown men, I'm not talking about boys. I'm talking about grown men. These are grown men. We need to treat them like grown men. They know what's coming out of their mouth. They know it'll hurt your feelings and they don't care. And they did it on purpose. Okay. So when we're dealing with those types of people, or the people that we, especially men, that you say something happened to you, you may have described something to them and then suddenly they do something similar. You know what I'm saying? We need to pick up on certain things. We need to stop, like I said, being so nice. That's the most simple form I could put it in. Stop being so damn nice, right? And really call these dudes out and be that type of girl who will open your mouth, because you'll be less likely to have someone feel like they could get away with taking advantage of you. We need to teach that to our daughters, to recognize those things. That's why we can't have men in our house being messed up towards us, because if we allow it, then the daughter don't see nothing wrong with it, y'all. And so when she's hanging around certain characters and allowing certain types of people in her life, that's when this R wording type of thing becomes more possible, because she is basically being a pushover. She's not speaking up for herself. Y'all, I'm speaking from experience. I'm not speaking just some random analyzation that I'm having. I know this, okay? When you freaking show up in the world like a timid, shy woman, men, grown men, they, especially the predator type, you become a big shiny red target. So I'm not saying that you can ultimately control another person's actions, because sometimes these things happen to even the most, obviously boisterous of us. And I'm not saying that it doesn't, but I'm just saying we can mitigate things. We can take our actual control of things and teach our daughters, actually have conversations with them, the things that our parents didn't do, that they were too nervous or shy or whatever, too religious to talk about. We need to have these conversations because we can see obviously that as soon as those the people higher up and or call themselves higher up than us, as soon as they start talking about our issues, everybody listening, everybody turning towards them and waiting for them to give us the answers, when we absolutely have the power, you know what I'm saying, in our everyday life to walk and talk in a way that mitigates some issues, at least, or a good bit of them. You know what I'm saying? Because, if any of the women listening or, listen later that have gone through things, y'all know I'm telling the truth. Because that's just what that is. If, man, I don't want to get too deep into my own personal stuff, but it's like, y'all, real recognize real. So I ain't got to worry about it. Y'all know what I'm talking about if y'all in here. But yeah, that's all I'm saying is that when this type of thing is so heavily focused on us, we need to understand that it's because we have the power. We ultimately have the power, but they're trying to convince us that we need to sit around and wait for them to give us the stuff. And we really, there's a lot of things we can do right from home. So yeah, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse. I just wanted to get up here and talk about that because it was really kind of on my mind today, and I hadn't gone live on this channel in a long time. I actually haven't done. Actually, I went live on my other channel the other day, but it was after a while of not being on YouTube for a while because I'm getting ready to move. I got a lot going on, but yeah, I hope y'all are having a good day and stuff. I hope y'all are not too stressed out about this election. If you are, take a few deep breaths. Y'all, it's gonna be okay. Like, we done had so many other elections that promised us a whole bunch of stuff, and girl, nothing has really changed. I'm gonna be real with you. So let's just, do what we can to not get too stressed out. Stress isn't good for the body. Okay, let's stay healthy. And I'll talk to y'all a different day. Thank y'all for listening. Good night. Bye.